Welcome to Forum 360. I'm Leslie Ungar, your host today. Thank you for joining us on our Zoom edition to our Global Outlook with a Local View. My two guests today recently were normal college co-eds, and then they were online college students. Think of the next 26 minutes as a crash course in what it's like to be a young person in this COVID world. No formal graduation, no prom, suddenly you're taking classes online, and a lot of uncertainty. Today, we will ask two University of Akron students, one a current student, one a recent grad, what it was like about the college experience, but also beyond the college experience and even before the college experience. I would like to introduce my first guest, Katie Campbell. At first glance, she might look like a traditional college student. At 24, she has already been married 6 years. She and her husband, who was in the armed services, decided to come back here to Northeast Ohio, and we're always glad when someone comes back. Katie is a human resource major and involved in the HR organization and will be their recruiting chair for fall 2020. Zach Lindsey, if you find him on LinkedIn, he proudly has photographed his diploma, a graduate in mechanical engineering, I might add. Also proudly announces that he will be starting at the Timken Company. But what I am most excited about is that he, like I, for decades, is in love with the television show The Rifleman. And if you don't know what we're talking about, then you should. So I welcome our viewers and I welcome our guests. Thank you for joining us today. Katie, I want to start with you. Both of you are members of Generation Z. You were born after 9/11. You grew up in a country that has always been at war. You lived through the recession of 2008, the most historical election of 2008. You lived through the election of 2016, and now we have this COVID crisis. Can you give us a couple thoughts on the world you grew up in?
Yeah, I feel like since we've been through so much and have seen so much, I feel like our generation kind of probably adapted a little bit easier to COVID since we're kind of used to having things happen and kind of have things thrown at us left and right. So I feel like our generation responded fairly well to it, adapting wise.
And Zach, any thoughts? I know it's your normal because you didn't grow up in any other climate, but any thoughts about the world you grew up in?
Yeah, it sure feels like it's changing a lot. There was a podcaster I was listening to a few months ago who said, I think their biggest observation was that your neighbors, like when we grew up, I felt like our neighbors, we could just chat about anything and there was like a sense of level of protection. And I just feel like now a lot of those values are out the door. You might not be as friendly with your neighbor. You might not ask about their political views or things they believe in. And I just feel like that's a good representation of how kind of the last few years have panned out. The emergence of social media, just the advances in technology. So we're like in a very weird world. I'm very blessed to be a young person because the COVID virus has, marginally not really impacted me, but I'm living with, my parents right now, and I have lots of friends who are older, my grandparents, so I'm very fearful for their lives and such. So it is a crazy time. I think it's a good point to step back and reflect on what our values are, what we believe as humans, what's important to us. And, it just really does feel like there's a lot of division in the world right now. So yeah, a lot of different thoughts all over the place.
Now, that's for yourself, and you kind of touched upon, for the world at large, but when you think about this country, do you have hopeful, uncertain fears? What are your thoughts, when you think about this country as a young adult moving forward, Zach?
Yeah, so I kind of bounce back and forth. There's certain pieces of news that will make me really optimistic, but then there's just a whole lot of stuff that comes out on a daily basis that I think is pretty disheartening in a lot of ways. So I think for me, something that I've always kind of reflected on a lot is before I go out and change the world, I want to change myself first. And I feel like that's something that I'm encouraging a lot of people to do right now. It's a good point to read, stay in communication with friends and family, and look for ways to give back to your local community, whether that's involvement in your church or nonprofits who are doing amazing things right now. So I think I am optimistic, but I'm not really sure what the end goal is for like the United States. Just because every time I think something potentially good is happening, it seems like just a whole bunch of stuff happens afterwards. So I don't really know where we go from here. I think a sense of community is really important. So hopefully we can get that back in some sense.
And Katie, anything that you want to weigh in on when you look at not just your future, but the future of our country?
Yeah, I personally noticed, especially with the COVID-19, I was like kind of our runner for the family. So I was the one who would go out, get all of the groceries and stuff. Actually, my dad is about to have a hip replacement, I think next week. So he really could not be compromised or get COVID-19. And with me having a little bit more of a stronger immune system and things like that, being younger, I would go out and I would fetch things. And but the nice thing about it was that kind of gave me hope is when I was out and about, my peers and even people from other generations would be like, hey, at this Target, they have some wipes, go get them. Like other people were trying to help because they were in the same boat. So it kind of gives you a little bit of hope for not only other generations, but our generation, that we're trying to come together and just make it through and still achieve our goals. Like Zach graduated, like he was still able to make it through. So it gives me a little bit of hope.
You are a part of 19 million college students, most required to complete their spring semester online. So what was it like for you to, one day you're on a college campus and the next day, all that is kind of taken away and you are an online student. How did that become your new normal? Did it become normal?
Yeah, I think for me, that definitely became the new normal. This past spring, I worked for a startup company in Akron, and the last 2 years, I've actually worked for a virtual nonprofit for engineering students. So I'm pretty adaptable and equipped to transition to online. I was in mostly business classes this spring and 2 engineering classes. So the 2 engineering classes were very difficult to complete online. The business classes, I think, transitioned pretty well. And so perhaps this is a roadmap for the future where we're going to see some majors, a lot of courses transition fully online. I think the university has already laid a groundwork for what that's going to look like in the future. So for me, I didn't really find it extremely difficult. The one thing I will note is when you do work at home, that becomes your work atmosphere. So when I was an RA on campus, the room that I lived in my dorm was my workspace, my sleep space, but also my study space. I think it's really important to have separation of spaces because I think it leads to a lot of anxiety, a lot of mental decline. And I'm sure, Katie, like in your home and such, you probably have like similar rooms and things like that. So I think it is important for me. I was able to like go for a walk or go be outside for a little bit, like step away from my workspace, which was also my school space. And I think that was kind of my biggest takeaway. But overall, it wasn't too difficult for me, but I know certain people were in a lot more unique circumstances.
What did you miss the most about being in school online? Was there something that you missed the most? Like I miss frozen yogurt. I miss going out for frozen yogurt. And I don't even go out all that often, but that's one of the things I miss the most is not being able to go out for frozen yogurt. So is there something that you missed being an online student that was different for you?
Yeah, for me, I think it was just doing schoolwork with my friends. So being a mechanical engineering student, being in the engineering college, it's really impossible to do things all alone, all by yourself. The friends that I've made the last 4 years, we've taken so many classes together and just, studying for finals, like going to get Taco Bell at like 2 a.m, like those are things that are just like really cool community, lifelong memories. So that happening during the last bit of the semester, having those memories kind of vanished a little bit, like that was difficult. But in terms of campus experience, again, I'm lucky. I've lived in Northeast Ohio my whole life. I know this will not be my last memory of Akron, but thinking of students who maybe are international or who had to move home across the country and they may never return to that institution, I think that that's quite sad and could be very dramatic or traumatic to a certain degree.
Katie, was there anything that you preferred about taking classes online? Was there any benefit that you could cite?
So I actually, before we moved home, attended online while my husband was in the service for a whole year through Kent before I transferred to Akron. So I was really used to the online atmosphere. It wasn't anything new to me. So I
that you have for someone that isn't as used to online, do you have any tips for making it a more effective experience?
I would say definitely, like how Zach said, having a designated area to work is important. I was working in the dining room with my mom while she was working, so it was a little difficult for both of us to work at the same time. So if you have an area in your house where it's just you can focus, I feel like that's key for online courses.
Now, one or both of you can answer. Did you do anything during this, call it quarantine, shelter at home, safer at home? Did you do anything that you wouldn't have done? Like a lot of people started baking. I would never start baking, but a lot of people all over the world started baking. Is there anything that you started doing or anything that you learned that you wouldn't have done in your normal life before COVID?
I personally haven't. My life is kind of chaotic, even before COVID. So my husband's an essential worker, so he was working, and it honestly, I didn't really have a whole lot of time, I guess, between school and him working and stuff. We just didn't have a whole ton of time.
Now, the University of Akron has made the decision to welcome students back to the campus this fall. How do you feel about returning to campus? And I guess, Zach, I would ask you, if you hadn't graduated, how would you feel about returning? We kind of say, I say in my own business as a coach, I can have an event, but people are going to decide whether they feel comfortable coming to it. What do you think about students going back? Are you going to feel comfortable going back to school in the fall?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I know that there's a lot of students who are living right now with, elderly parents, grandparents, things like that. I think there's actually some sort of an argument where you could say it might be better for young people to return back to being with young people. I think the university has actually taken a really good step. I think they haven't made any drastic decisions, but they're also being proactive and keeping communication and feedback in the loop. So I think, as we see states opening up, there's certain states that I think have done a really good job. But I think that we are making a good decision to have people back. It is interesting because our university is an urban institution integrated with the city. It's not like certain universities that are just out kind of isolated in a plot of land or a part of even a bigger metropolitan city. So it'll be curious to see what that looks like. But as a whole, I think it'll be good. We have a relatively strong, or a smaller residential community of people who actually live on campus. We have a huge commuter community. So I think not too much is going to change. I just think our housing departments and the dorms, we're going to have to be really savvy about how we ensure good practice when we can.
And Katie, how do you feel? Excited about going back to school?
Yeah, I'm ready. Although I feel Akron did a very good job under the circumstances, getting everything online so quickly, I am ready to go back. I miss the campus. I miss the library especially. I cranked out so many papers there, and some of my best work I've done at the library. So I really miss having that type of resource. Just you can go, not have any distractions. also I feel for some of like the organizations, especially SHRM, like I'm involved in HR SHRM. So I'm excited to see, you know, the other board members, the people associated with it, and just have that environment back. I think Akron has done a really good job ensuring our safety from the emails I've received. They've kind of talked about some hybrid classes, which is really cool, that they can integrate the online and the school setting. As some of my peers I know weren't super excited about online, they kind of get that option to learn at the level they like to learn at. And then the people who did enjoy it also, it's kind of like a win-win for both sides.
Today we are talking to a current co-ed, University of Akron co-ed, and a very recent graduate in mechanical engineering. Zach Lindsey just graduated, and Katie Campbell is still going to be at the University of Akron. We're talking about college, COVID, and the future. You know, I watched several people give commencement addresses virtually, from President Obama, Conan, Oprah. If you were a commencement speaker this year to this class, what one thing would you wanted to have told the seniors or the students right behind them about their future? Is there one thing that you would want to tell them, Zach?
Yeah, I think a huge part of college, in my opinion, while you build skills and you obtain this education, I think it's really life building blocks. And I think perseverance and discipline are two of my big takeaways from college. And so if I was a commencement speaker, I would really harp on that a lot, because I think regardless of whatever you're going to do, whether it's in private sector, public sector, nonprofit, creative work, like whatever you're doing, you do need to be consistent. You need to have discipline. You need to really persevere. And I think those are huge themes of things that have kind of developed the last few months. But it's also a good way to reflect on your college career. I mean, even though these last few months have been very different, there's no doubt that if you're graduating from an institution, you have worked hard, you've put in a lot of time and effort. You may have had to work through school or take steps that other folks have not had to take. So I think those are two really important things to point out.
Katie, if there was one thing that you would want to tell your either graduating or the students right behind you, what would you want to tell them?
That honestly, like the biggest thing is that we're proud of them. I coached cheerleading for a high school near me, and we had made like little senior baskets for some of the seniors and did like a little adopt a senior type deal. And they were just so appreciative of it. And just that acknowledgement that they made it through, and that they have people behind them. They're not alone, because online it can get kind of lonely. So just having that reassurance that other people are proud of them and acknowledge their accomplishments, and they're going to have just bright futures ahead of them. They made it through this, and pretty much they can probably make it through anything now.
Absolutely. You know, one thing I'm curious about, for decades and decades, it has been said that young people are known for having a lot of opinions and feeling strongly about politics, but they don't show up and vote for presidential elections. What do you think is going to happen this election as far as young people voting? Just the act of voting. Do you think that your peers are going to vote in this election?
I honestly don't know. I vote. I love to vote. I think it's great. I think it'll be really interesting to see if we do a mail-in voting system. I think that's going to have huge implications on whether people vote.
So,
and I honestly, I don't know.
Excuse me, do you think that young people, does that mean if they mail it in, will they vote more or less?
I think they'll vote more. I think that young people, we have a tendency to get super motivated, and we'll show up and we'll use our voice. But when it comes to the act of voting, it seems like young people kind of drop the ball. Whether that's, you hope that everyone has equal access to be able to vote. But if we implement a mail-in system, I think that it becomes a lot easier to vote. And so I think you would see more young people vote. But ultimately, I don't know. I mean, even in the last few months, there's been a lot of outrage in a lot of different areas. And young people, again, I'm really proud of young people for using their voice. But we've seen in the primary elections, in the previous year elections, that it seems like young people are not coming out to vote. So I really don't know. I feel very 50-50 on that.
Okay. Katie, any thoughts on whether college students and recent grads are going to come out and vote?
I personally think that after the pandemic had happened, there's a lot of students with different opinions and varying opinions, and I feel like it does motivate them, like Zach said, to go out there and voice their opinion. But then again, it depends too, especially like with all of us leaving campus. Some people can't drive, so if they have to drive to go vote, they might not drive to go vote if they don't have a way to get there. So if they did a mail-in or even something on technology, making it accessible to everybody, there may be more, but I'm kind of where Zach is. It could be 50-50.
Let me ask you, I know that, whether we're talking about young people or whether we're talking about Hispanics or African American or religious groups, there's no one way any group does anything. But I'm still curious, overall, if you had to give some kind of percentage to younger people wearing masks and social distancing, I'm just curious overall, do you see it in your age group or kind of that's, caution to the wind and you don't see either masks or social distancing? Any thoughts, Katie? As you're the founder of the family?
Yeah, I have actually noticed, because I'm not in Akron, but where we're located, there actually is quite a few people of my age that wear masks. I found from when I've had like quick interactions at the store, a lot of them are also in the same boat. They have family at home that they're worried about contracting the disease, and they're trying their best to suppress that. Also, I know just from other family members, especially the younger ones, they kind of look at it as fun because the mask can have different designs and they play with them, like matching their outfits to their mask, and things like that. So it kind of does have that sort of fun aspect to it. But I do feel that quite a few are wearing them. Some don't, if they, are on their own and don't have anyone else they, are kind of worried about contracting the disease. But some even do just for themselves, just to ensure that little bit of safety and so they don't touch their face,
Zach, if you had to identify, again, I know as a group there's a lot of different voices, but your generation, would you say they're more religious or more spiritual?
Definitely more spiritual. Yeah, I think the greatest rise in any religion in the past 15 years has been spirituality. I think spirituality means a lot of different things, but I think generally I think with the age of information and people expressing a lot more open-minded opinions about whatever, I just think that a lot of people are definitely becoming more spiritual for sure.
In a word or two, Katie, I would think that HR is going to change so much in the future. As recruiting chair, give us a sentence or two that you would say to people about considering HR as a career.
With everything going on, I would definitely kind of motion them to be ready for some social media, a lot of reliance on technology. We're going to have to do a lot more recruiting through virtual. Like I've already started thinking of ideas of what I'm going to be posting on the, SHRM page. And like, I'm already like thinking of things I need to work with on the board for how we're going to reach out to all of our students at Akron. So I would just basically let them know, be ready for a lot more heavy technology based instead of the face-to-face interaction that we're used to at like job fairs and things like that.
In the couple minutes that we have left, I'm going to ask for 1 or 2 word answers in kind of a lightning round so we can get an idea of all aspects of a college co-ed. Do you prefer pizza or subs? Zach?
Pizza.
Kate?
Pizza.
Your favorite pizza would have what 2 ingredients, Katie?
Pepperoni and extra cheese.
And Zach?
Pepperoni and green peppers.
Okay. Are you coffee, tea, chai? What are you? What's your favorite drink? Zach?
Coffee, black coffee for sure.
Black coffee. Starbucks or not Starbucks?
I roast my own coffee, so
Right, you and your
not
dad
Starbucks.
coffee.
Yep.
And Katie, how about you? Favorite drink?
I love cold brew. So coffee.
Tell us, is there one person in the world you admire the most, Katie?
My grandmother.
And Zach?
My mom, for sure.
Okay. Who is a musical artist that you recently downloaded?
I've been listening to a lot of, Johnny Cash. Yeah, a lot of Johnny Cash.
Yeah, and Katie?
I would have to say Kenny Chesney.
Okay. They were born shortly after 9/11. Then the bottom kind of fell out of the economy in 2008. They witnessed the election of 2008 and then 2016, then the coronavirus. They must be tempered like steel. Today, we had the opportunity to hear from two college students, a recent graduate, Zach Lindsey, mechanical engineering and starting at the Timken Company, and kind of a non-traditional co-ed, Katie Campbell, 24 years old and already married 6 years. Her first book is going to be on tips of a successful marriage, and then it'll be on HR. This is Leslie Ungar. Thank you for joining us for our Global Outlook with a Local View.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.